Welcome back to On Stitching ADHD Urban Ed Talks. Today we are thrilled to have Miss Tamara Sheppard join us. Tamara is a licensed social worker whose dedication shines through her work with student support services in an urban district in New York State. With her extensive experience and passion for helping students thrive, Tamara brings invaluable insights into understanding and addressing ADHD within diverse educational settings. Let's dive into our expertise and uncover strategies for fostering success for all learners. Welcome, Tamara.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Please, can you briefly tell us about your background and experience?
So, I'm currently a school social worker within the city of Rochester at one of our big five districts. I've been a school social worker for close to 14 years. Prior to that, I did work at another agency that looked at the collaborative problem solving methods and child and family team model, where when we had students that were experiencing mental health or social emotional issues, we took that team approach to be able to work with them and support them and find solutions. So it's definitely my pleasure being here today, and I hope that something that I share is helpful to those who are listening.
Thank you. So, people hear the word social worker, they are wondering, how does your role in the district, right, impact students with ADHD?
So my role is kind of multifaceted because we have a unique position where we're there to support the student, we're there to support the family, and we're also there to support the school. So a lot of times when there are different behavioral things that come up or different strategies that teachers or staff are trying to learn about, or if there's conversations that, we need to have with parents, the social workers are an intricate part of that. Because many times, if it's determined that a student needs counseling, we would be providing that individual or group counseling for them. If there's conversations regarding the discussion of medication, we are usually kind of the ones having those conversations with the families and assessing their comfortability with it. And as well as the teachers kind of, well, what do I do with this student that's showing a little bit more difference than the others? So that's why I would say that our role comes in because we're able to connect and support various people at a time.
Talking about your role as a social worker and your interactions with teachers, what are the kind of symptoms teachers find challenging in the classroom?
Well, I think that definitely one of the signs that are very noticeable is the student that can't sit still. If they're fidgeting, if you're, reaching out to them, trying to teach them, they're looking all over the room. They're not able to stay on task. They might be standing up. They might be talking a little bit more. They might have a little avoidance to them. They might, seem like they're not focusing. But then on the other hand, those are the students that stick out. The ones that kind of go under the radar are the students who don't have that hyperactivity piece of it, but struggle with attention, where they could be sitting there looking and trying to, take in everything that's going on. But because their behaviors are not so outwardly, sometimes they fall through the cracks. So definitely wanting to look at those students who aren't causing, visible things and checking in with them and seeing if they're understanding. And for the students who are having difficulty with paying attention or listening or, putting an effort into their schoolwork, talk with them as well, because I think that it's very important that we rule out other factors before we just immediately, throw the label of ADHD on students. I think that it's important to, see what's going on with them, what's changed for them. Has there been a change in sleep? Has there been a change in diet? Has there been, something in the family dynamics that have shifted that may be impacting the student? I think a lot of times we put that label on when there's so many other factors that could be contributing to a student's inattentiveness or hyperactivity.
So, you talked about the family dynamics. From your experience, what are the kind of challenges parents share with you that they encounter interacting with the district?
So some of the things that parents indicate is that they don't always feel heard. Even though we say that we want to treat parents as experts, sometimes we don't always take their feedback into consideration. There's also sometimes a lack of trust where there has been information that has been shared that has become the topic of discussion or a topic of judgment, where they feel like there's stigma and labels and stereotypes that have been attached to them. There's also the piece of them feeling as though the school system is trying to push medication on their children. And that for them is that I can say is one of the biggest things that I've heard from parents is why do they always want me to put my child on medication and not looking into the reasons for their apprehensions. Parents, when we look at medications that we're prescribing or suggesting to parents, they're looking at it, is this going to make my child be a zombie? Are they going to, be sitting still? Are they going to lose their personality? What exactly is going to happen to them? And when you have that conversation, some of them have been open to trying that. And they would try one medication and they didn't think that that worked. And then they tried something else. And then after 2 or 3 times of trying something, they're kind of like, you know what, this isn't working. So I don't want this to continually be an option. Other things that parents have talked about is that they get more phone calls regarding the negative behaviors or aspects of their students' education more than they get positive. And they would like to have a little bit more balance of that. And lastly, I've, heard parents explain that sometimes they don't necessarily want the school to have their updated contact information because it's one more call, one more issue, one more problem that they have to deal with. And many of them are trying to work, get out and make a living and do, things to keep the household going. And they don't have the time to keep coming to the school when there's an issue. So those are some of the things that I've, had parents express to me.
So, how are you able to balance that? What strategies are you able to use that you can share with us that have been effective in bringing this to very important aspect of the kid's life to the table or to the center?
I like to keep things person centered and I also like to keep them individualized. So if I'm talking with a parent and they're expressing some of these concerns with me and I empathize, I connect with them, I understand that yes, it can be frustrating, it can be scary, and talk with them about their fears about things,
Mhm.
and kind of share with them, hey, understandably so, when you've tried something more than once and it's not successful, do we? But if they're on the fence about medication where they're like, do I or don't I? I talk with them and say, as adults, when we have a headache, we can try Tylenol. And if that doesn't work, we try ibuprofen. And if ibuprofen doesn't work, we try something else. So we're constantly looking for something to help relieve that pain or that issue that we're dealing with. And sometimes it takes trying things more than once to see what fits for your child.
Mhm.
I also encourage them to do medication reviews. So once they get, if they pursue that, getting their child medication, have you had those conversations with the doctors about what you're observing, what things have changed, what has gotten better, what is it that you're noticing about them? Additionally, with parents, when we're completing like the social history paperwork, and
Mhm.
parents are talking to me saying that years ago their child had been diagnosed with something, but they felt like it was something else. I
Mhm.
encourage them go back to the pediatrician
Mhm.
because honestly, I think that as I said earlier, that children are given the ADHD label when there's other traumatic things that have gone on with them, and also help the parents try to process through what is something that your child may have experienced
Mhm.
or dealt with that you may have thought that they got through or that you were able to get through that you don't realize may be having an impact on your child,
Mhm.
and talking with them about the possibilities of exploring that as well. So for me, I don't come at people as the quote unquote expert. I try to talk to them in real terms and connect with them to let them know, hey, it's up to you to decide. I'm not trying to push something one way or the other, but how can we support you? How can we support your child's education? And I'll give one example. One of my first couple of years in the district, there was a student that I was working with who had been diagnosed with ADHD. And he was struggling really, really, really hard. And I know that the school had been advocating for the parents to pursue medication. And I had completed several home visits, just talking with the parent, like, hey, your child is not able to pay attention in school and it's greatly impacting their academics. And it wasn't until we had a meeting in my office with the teachers and the parent, and they showed the parent academically where her fourth grade student was, the reading level that he was at, the types of books that he was able to read were at a kindergarten and a first grade level. And it was at that point that the parent broke down and cried in the office because she said she didn't know that her child was that impacted. And she felt ashamed that her apprehensiveness, to pursuing other strategies had created this. And she said, well, they talk all the time. They're able to have conversation. And, we were able to explain conversational language is different than reading comprehension. And, after she was able to see that this is what the impact has been, she was more interested in pursuing, the counseling, more interested in pursuing, medical interventions because she wanted to help her son be able to pay attention. And lastly, on that, I would say that when his medication would start to run out and he would, tell his mom, hey, I need to get more medication. And if she was kind of slow on doing that, he would go pull a fire drill. He would do something to kind of signal to us, like, you have to call home. You have to let my mom know to get. So even he noticed the difference of how he was feeling, and how some, of the strategies were working, that's the way that he would prompt us to do it. So sometimes, kids will try to do things to help themselves get help and their parents, if that makes sense.
I'm listening to you and I'm wondering, do you think from your experience with parents you've met that when their kids are diagnosed, they are really informed and educated about what it truly means, how it feels, how to recognize the kind of challenges these kids will encounter, not just only in school, but also at home?
From my perspective, and again, this is from completing hundreds of social histories over the years that I've been in a school. And for those who don't know what social histories are, those are packets of information that we complete with parents when their child is going to a committee on special education meeting. So the portion of that paperwork that I cover is it looks at medical history, educational history, social and emotional history. And from talking to them about that, whether their child has been diagnosed in the past, they know that if I mention my child has this symptom, this is what they're diagnosed with, but they don't necessarily know what that means. They don't necessarily know that, you know, the medication, if you notice things different, that you should speak up and say something. They don't necessarily know that there are other things that their child could have going on. I recently, last week, was doing a social history with a parent, and they indicated that their child was diagnosed with ADHD, but that they didn't know like what that looked like. But when we talked about some of the traumatic things that had occurred for their child, I said to them, has your doctor explored PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder? Like, is with the trauma that has happened with your child, that can also mimic some of the things that you're seeing, like that, those intrusive thoughts, their minds being distracted, them thinking about other things. Those are some of the things that can come up with that. So once we had that conversation, she said, no one's ever told me that. So now, I want to talk with his doctor and, really be able to see what else this could be. And I also explained to the parent that if you're noticing that your child has been put on Concerta or Adderall or Ritalin, kind of those medications that are for ADHD, and you're not noticing a change, I explained to them that medication can help with kind of those behaviors, but it doesn't fix the emotional. So if there's something that's impacting them or that they're dealing with, you also have to treat and focus on that part too, to get to the root of whatever is bothering them or, might be triggering or might be festering in them that hasn't had a chance to be processed or explained outward.
Let's look at the professionals, teachers that are at the forefront of taking care of or supporting kids with ADHD. From your experience, can you share if you think that they are getting the training, the understanding, strategies that they can use to manage their classrooms?
So I would say, and I'll just start with this caveat that teaching today is a lot different than how it was 20, 25, 30 years ago. And some of the things that our students and families are entering the school setting with are much different than what we saw years ago. And I think because of that, it can be overwhelming to teachers whose programs did not prepare them to deal with behavioral or social emotional supports. And when I talk with, staff members who went through different programs and came into the school setting, some of them will share, we didn't talk about this stuff. We didn't learn this. You learned how to write a lesson, how to teach a lesson plan, how to scaffold approaches, how to, set up the differentiated learning or the ways that you can support students who have different needs, learning needs. But that social emotional piece of how do you deal with the student who didn't sleep the night before? How do you deal with, students that are homeless, or how do you deal with people that are living in poverty and may not be having, certain resources. How do you deal with that in the classroom? So I think that's one piece of it is the training. The other side of it, I think, is that there are trainings. There are opportunities, I would say specifically within our district that are offered through our teaching and learning, the True North Logic, kind of that system where staff can go in and get the training, but then it's, do you have the time to do it? Do you feel overwhelmed, or when your workday is over, do you have time or energy for that one more thing? So I think those are some of the factors that contribute to people either being trained before they enter the classroom, or what kind of motivate them to seek the training while they're on the job.
Talking about training, have you really experienced or seen a training being provided for teachers that is ADHD specific?
So I'll say for myself, the division that I work in within our district, I help facilitate a lot of trainings.
Mhm.
So with that, I personally have facilitated trainings on trauma in the school environment, the aftermath of trauma, mental health in the school setting, and have talked about the various diagnoses that appear in the school setting and how we can support. I've also personally facilitated social emotional learning trainings on some of the behaviors that might be seen in schools and how staff can create classrooms that follow, those models to be able to support students. So I can say for myself that I have, and I know that, there's things that, again, the district will put out that says, hey, but I can't say if I've seen something that says ADHD, what you need to learn 101. I can't say that I've personally seen it.
I'm just curious to know the trainings you've been putting out there. What's the reception? I know time is a factor, but are you getting people to actually attend and implement those strategies in the classroom?
So what I've seen this past summer, I had the opportunity to present to new and returning staff members, staff members that left and then came back into the district or are new to our district. And they were very receptive to the information. But afterwards, several of them came up to me and said, when do we have time? There's so much pressure to get the academic side of things put into play. They have to, be concerned about testing and, be concerned about the time frames that they have to do certain things that they don't always feel equipped. And the other feedback that I got is that they've been told you should do this, but don't always feel that they're given the how to. So that's been some of the feedback that I've gotten from staff members.
Wow, interesting. So What strategies, in your experience, have you found most effective in supporting students with ADHD in the urban districts, setting?
I've found that it starts with supporting the teachers and getting them to look at things from a lagging skills perspective. Years ago, the job that I had before, where I told you we looked at that child and family team model, is we looked at what are some of the things that the student is doing or a child is doing that might be negative to us, but is getting their need met. And then looking at what is the need that needs to be met and what is the skill that we can teach. I also have, wanted to work with staff about looking at the goal of the behavior. What is the goal behind the behavior? If someone is, avoiding or having different things going on, are they trying to get attention? Do they need that one-on-one time? Do they need to be able to be a leader and have some incentives? I've in working with, children and families as well, doing those incentive charts. Like, hey, how can we, get there to be something that you can focus on, that you can work towards so that you can get some of that positive reinforcement, that positive, feedback to be able to say, okay, you know what, I can work through this. I can achieve this. I can, stay on track with this, celebrating the small successes with them, doing the check in and check out, checking in. How are things with you in the morning? How are things going on, with you throughout the day? And at the end of the day, I've talked with teachers about giving students leadership opportunities. Sometimes students are bored. They've worked through, and one thing I've learned is that sometimes, with students who are diagnosed with ADHD, they pick up a lot of different things. So you might be think that they're not paying attention to you, but they're listening to you. They're also paying attention to the conversation on the other side of the room. They're taking in, the lesson that's being taught up in the front. So there's just a lot of, stimulation that's occurring, but it doesn't always mean that they can't understand or pick up on what's being done. So looking at how do you use those strengths? If you see that a student is able to multitask, what role can you give them in the classroom? If you see that, they're finishing with their things and they're starting to fidget a little bit, what can you give them at their desk? Can you give them things to ball up? Can you give them things to pull on? Can you give them things to tap with so that they can expend some of that energy while they're sitting there to where it doesn't become a distraction where they're getting up and moving around the room? So those are just a couple of things that, I've suggested or worked with students and teachers with.
What are the common misconceptions about ADHD that you encounter in urban school communities, and how are you able to address them?
I think that sometimes when there's labels put on, whatever that label is, it follows, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And I think that for parents, when their child gets that label,
Mhm.
for them, it's a stigma. And it kind of, makes them a little bit nervous to receive support. Students who have been labeled with certain things, it kind of puts a feeling of insecurity or difference, or, just again, having another conversation with a parent who said, my child knows that they're different and they know that they're being treated different. So when they're getting pulled out of the classroom for other supports, to them, they feel that their classmates know that they are different. So it's, some of the things that we think that we're doing that is helping sometimes is also creating, that concern, because it's like, okay, I don't want to be different from everybody else. I want to be seen the same. And I think that, at times there's conversations that, students with ADHD that they're unable to learn. They can't pay attention. They don't know what's going on. They're going to struggle throughout the rest of their lives. And some of the people who become the most successful are people who have had that diagnosis because of their ability to take on multiple things at a time, pay attention to detail, to kind of have those things. So I would just encourage people that, whether you have had a diagnosis of ADHD, your child has, or someone, look at the strengths of what they are able to do. Look at the positives instead of looking at it from a deficit model. Because if we look at it from all the things that we can't do or that we're unable to do, that's the mindset that we will operate in. And if we want to do different, if we want to have different outcomes, if we want that stigma to change, we have to change it ourselves. We have to speak differently. We have to put more positive projections out there. Like, okay, you know what? This is maybe a struggle right now, but how will this be successful for this person? How will, you meet doctors who have ADHD. You meet social workers who have ADHD. You meet construction workers who have ADHD. Any facet of the workforce or in the community that you can think of that involves people, there's someone who may have that diagnosis, but that goes to show that you still can function. You still can have a life and a future. You still can accomplish things. So that's what I would say that I've picked up on in the community, is seeing on the other end how people started out one way, but were able to accomplish things in their life.
So, if you have a magic wand right now, what kind of changes would you make in our current urban school designs that you think will actually make an impact for students with ADHD?
So I think, and don't try to steal my ideas either, but I think, I think, and I did try this one year at one of the schools that I was at, but I would do a newsletter
Mm,
and kind of explain what is ADHD, what does it look like, but what does it look like when it's with something else? What
mhm,
does ADHD with depression look like? What does ADHD with anxiety look like? And what can you do to support your student in the classroom? Just a one pager. How
mhm,
can you do this? This is what it looks like. This is what it means when you think that you're asking your student to do something quote unquote simple. If
mhm,
they have these other things going on, this is how they may perceive it, or this is how it can get done. So that would be one thing that I would do. I would also, want to ensure that schools are having health fairs, that they're doing things to have, the providers or community members there to talk to families about their questions that they have regarding ADHD, and what are some of the medical interventions, the holistic interventions, the different strategies that people want to use. Everyone doesn't want to use medication, but what are some other ways? What are some diet changes that you can make? What are some other, factors that you can do? What are some other therapies or techniques that you can take in addition to it? So I would just want to provide a variety of strategies or resources for families, but also for the educators that would be working with them in the classroom.
okay. That's awesome. If there is a parent listening right now that is struggling with understanding how to support their kids in school, what will be your advice? What kind of suggestions would you want to give to that parent?
I would say too, to not give up on your child, to not give up hope. At times it may be frustrating, it may be overwhelming. You may feel like you're at your wits' end, that you don't know what else that you can do, that you don't know if you have the energy, the wherewithal, the mental fortitude to be able to keep going or to try it again and to, you know, get on the other side of things. But I would encourage you, don't give up, because your child needs you. They need to know. I'll say this. Instant Kim Berg came out with some working
Mm,
assumptions about children and about parents. And the working assumptions that they said were that children want their parents to be proud of them. They want to do well. They want to receive praise. They want to be successful. And the working assumptions about parents said that they want their child to do better than them, that they want to hear good things about their children, and they want their children to be successful. So, in keeping both things in mind, parents and children are two individuals on their own road trying to seek success, trying to be whole, and trying to do better. So once you have that understanding and know that both of you are on that journey, both of you are trying to make it and get through that, I think that kind of changes the understanding and the viewing that a parent might have regarding the behavioral or struggles that their child has. So keep pushing. They need you. They need your support. They need your encouragement, and they need you to speak life into them, speak positivity into them, but also be open to suggestions. Even if you don't want to take them or pursue them, be open to hearing about some of the options and the interventions. And I would also lastly say, even if you personally have had a bad experience with being diagnosed with something, being in school and being diagnosed with ADHD or any other, mental health issues or labels, that was your experience and it may have been tough. Absolutely. But please allow yourself to be open to your child being able to receive some support and resources as well.
Yeah. So, on a final note, do you have anything that I've missed that you would want our listeners to know?
I would just say that again, just if you're noticing things about your child that's a little bit different, that is sticking out to you, that things may have changed or that have questions about, talk to the social worker at your school, talk to the counselor at your school, speak to the teacher at your school, and also speak to their pediatrician. Because when it comes to supporting your child, it's going to take a team approach. It's not just a one size fits all. One person isn't necessarily going to have all of the answers, but the more people that you can get to sit around that table and support your child, I believe the better the outcome would be for their learning and their educational journey.
Thank you. To wrap up things, other than working in the district, what are some of the things you are doing right now that you want to share with our listeners?
So I am the creator and founder of newmindsetnewoutcome.com, which is a motivational website that offers, positive affirmations and, ways that we can have new outcomes in our lives with the shifting of our mindset.
Mm.
So I provide individual and group counseling. I do presentations. I do vision board workshops. I do public speaking opportunities. And in addition to that, I'm the director of a peer ambassador program through Breathe Deep Inc. And that is working with adolescents who are helping to put the word out about mental health with youth. And so they did a documentary over the summer program that they did where they received training on mental health, the symptoms of it. What are some of the ways that parents can support things? What are some things that students can do to support one another? And it's been an awesome, awesome opportunity. So those are just some of the other things that I'm involved with outside of the school setting that I think have been, helpful both ways, helpful for me to be out there, but then also helpful for me to learn from others that I'm interacting with in the community.
Yeah. Thank you, Tamara, for all you do, for
Thank
also
you.
taking the time, to share your expertise and experiences with us today. Your insights into supporting students with ADHD in urban education settings have been invaluable. We are so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you that you are embarking on this and being able to get the word out there and start the conversation. So you keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, to our listeners, we hope you found this episode enlightening and informative. Stay tuned for more discussions on Unstitching ADHD Urban Ed Talks. Remember, understanding and support are key to unlocking the potentials of every student. Until next time, have a great day.